Third day of August 2024 and right on time for K24's Newton. My name is Joe Church, and today, being on a Friday, we'll be reviewing how the week has been like, especially the major events. We'll be touching on the now actually looming education crisis, as teachers are adamant that they will proceed on a strike come Monday, when schools will be opening for their third term, even as the Treasury Cabinet Secretary, that is John Mbadi, has said that there is no money to hire 46,000 intern teachers, that is for the JSS, and also the additional 20 that was anticipated in this financial year. In what he says, it's a tough fiscal space that is there. We'll see how that will or how the unions will react to that, even as the Ministry of Education has now ordered that all children must register on shift before Monday or before going back to school. Do you know the process of that? There's also an uproar over the education funding model, as confusion is still rocking. Remember, there are concerns of students who have been placed in the wrong bands, and the bands basically means perhaps you'll have to finance yourself more than what the government will offer as scholarship or loans. That will form a better part of conversation this morning, even as the Chief Justice Martha Koome has termed the new university funding model as a flawed, and that there is need to review the whole system. That is the Chief Justice Martha Koome's view. And now, experts are also warning that should students be admitted, all of them, that is first-year students, with no money, then there could be possibly a crisis, especially with the universities running their operations and day-to-day activities. Remember our topic yesterday on the CBK secret currency printing deal? That will also feature in a conversation this morning. It has sparked a debate, especially now that the Treasury Cabinet Secretary John Mbadi says there is no money to hire on permanent and pensionable terms of the 46,000 JSS teachers. And, Kenya was just questioning, then where did we get the money to print the 14.2 billion Kenya shillings tender? That was actually a deal that was awarded to a Germany-based G&D money printer. That is raising eyebrows. Keep your views coming for social media platforms at K24 Tv, Joel Church, as well on the SMS and WhatsApp numbers on the bottom of the screens. Also, on Matters Politics, we'll be highlighting what is happening. Raila Odinga's roadmap to the AUC, how many are supporting him so far. But also, here in the country, there are plans for 46,000 civil servants to proceed on retirement on those positions, according to the government spokesperson Isaac Mwaura. They will be filled by the youth who actually have been at the forefront of the revolution seeking good governance here in the country. That is the Gen Z revolution. I'll be sampling some of the feedback as they stream in, and as well getting as many voices as possible on this platform this morning. In studio, I'll be joined by a very key guest, that is Wanjiru Gikonyo. She is a transformative governance expert. Dr. Barak Muluka, strategic communication advisor, and Eric Thuri, former president, Law Society of Kenya. Conversation that you can't afford to miss. But before getting to the newspaper review and also focus on the events of the week, let's first of all focus on these stories where NAC Kenya Party leader Martha Karua has urged Kenyans to reject the new funding university model, arguing that it unfairly shifts the burden of loans onto students and hinders their constitutional right to education. This comes as students continue to voice their opposition, claiming that the model discriminates between the rich and the poor, rather than allowing education to serve as the equalizer factor, or rather the equalizing factor it is meant to be. Karua also criticized the government's plan to keep grade 9 students in primary schools, despite the availability of teachers and classrooms in secondary schools following the phasing out of Form 1. Our education reporter Harry Chimea has more.
The new university funding model is facing increasing resistance, with many arguing that it violates the constitutional right to education by transferring the debt burden onto students. NARC Kenya party leader Martha Karua has called on Kenyans to reject the model outright.
It shifts the burden of education to the backs of students and their families, majority of whom can ill afford, violating the essence of Article 43 of the Constitution, which guarantees the right to education. We must now reject this new oppressive university funding model placed on the shoulders of our students and their families. It represents an attempt to extract wealth from the most vulnerable.
Meanwhile, student leaders have vehemently opposed the funding model, stating that it segregates the rich and the poor, contrary to the constitutional principle of education as an equalizing factor.
Sasa ukijua mimi niko band 5, nijua wewe uko band 1. Kweli hapo kuna usawa kweli hapo. Maana elimu inafaa ikuwe inaweka kila mtu akuwe sawa.
In our times we were given around 40,000 help, and then that is the only loan. Currently, you can find that a person is having a loan of 100,000 per year or more.
Because how can a needy student pay 60,000, 50,000 per semester, while us students who are in the old funding model, we are paying up to around 20,000 for a semester.
On the other hand, government spokesperson Isaac Mwaura has defended the funding model, insisting that it is necessary for the sustainability of higher education.
Hakuna mtu yote atawachwa nje akose kuingia katika chuo kikuu ama taasisi kwa kisingizio kwamba bado hajaweza kupatiwa mkopo ama kupatiwa fedha au fadhili na serikali. Huu ni mfumo mpya wa kusawazisha swala lile nzima, tusiwe kwamba hata vyuo vikuu vinaweza kunadiwa na watu ambao pengine wameweza kufanya biashara na vyuo vikuu ama taasisi na ilhali hawajaweza kulipwa.
Mwaura also emphasized that the government is committed to engaging with teacher unions to prevent potential strikes in public schools. In addition to her criticism of the funding model, Karua took issue with the government's plan to domicile grade 9 students in primary schools despite the availability of teachers and classrooms in secondary schools following the elimination of Form 1.
The money we are now setting aside to build fresh schools, when we have empty classrooms, should be used to create classrooms in the few places where none exists. A teacher teaching junior secondary can also take classes in the upper secondary. But now what is happening is that the JSS teachers are being made to teach subjects they were never trained for, because the two systems are segregated.
This concern has also been echoed by the Kenya Union of Post-Primary Education Teachers KUPPET. However, the government remains firm in its decision, stating that new classrooms are being built and teachers are being retooled to accommodate these changes.
A teacher of physics and chemistry is being given a learning area of social studies, something which they are not prepared for. You can imagine how the Teacher Service Commission has subjected our children to this kind of very bad quality of life, and what we expect in future is a disaster.
The government has provided resources for retooling of teachers for the implementation of CBC.
Harriet Chimea, K24.
Away from that, a petition challenging the appointment of former Mombasa Governor Ali Hassan Joho as Cabinet Secretary for Mining and Blue Economy has been filed in court. The petition submitted by the Genesis for Human Rights Commission accuses Joho of gross misconduct, including involvement in economic crimes, drug trafficking and embezzlement during his tenure as governor.
I will perform the function of my office.
The future of Ali Hassan Joho as Cabinet Secretary for Mining and Blue Economy is now in legal jeopardy following a petition questioning his appointment. Filed by Genesis for Human Rights Commission under a certificate of urgency, the petition argues that Joho's appointment violates constitutional standards and alleges that he lacks the necessary academic qualifications for the role. It also claims that the clearance process for Joho's appointment was both unprocedural and illegal. The National Assembly, the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, and the Commission for University Education are also named in the suit. The petitioners accuse these bodies of ignoring submitted memoranda that contained evidence of Joho's unsuitability for the position. The National Assembly and EACC are particularly criticized for their roles in clearing Joho for the appointment. In a supporting affidavit, Caleb Ngwena, a resident of Bamburi, Mombasa County, alleges that Joho was involved in corrupt practices and mismanagement of public funds while serving as governor. Ngwena cites a parliamentary report by the late Professor George Saitoti that mentions Joho in relation to economic crimes and drug trafficking. The petitioners are requesting the court to issue conservatory orders barring Joho from performing the duties of Cabinet Secretary for Mining and Blue Economy until the petition is resolved. The petition states that, pending the hearing and determination of the petition, the court should issue conservatory orders restraining the interested party from acting as and discharging the duties and functions of Cabinet Secretary for Mining, Blue Economy and Maritime Affairs. Justice Ellen Mugambi has directed that the petition and application be served within 7 days, with responses to be filed and served within 14 days. Further directions on the case are expected on October 17, 2024. Other listed in the case as respondents are the Speaker of the National Assembly, the Committee on Appointments, Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, the Commission for University Education, the Office of the Registrar of Political Parties, and the Attorney General. Joho assumed the Cabinet Secretary role from Salim Vuria, who was reassigned to the Trade and Industry docket. Brian Amoai, K24.
The Ko-Uchumi campaign has called for accountability in the country's debt management, saying that the government had engaged in wanton borrowing without corresponding benefits to Kenyans. The civil society group held a citizen assembly in Nairobi on Thursday, where the Office of the Control of Budget warned that domestic debt, which attracts high interest rates, will soon become a burden too heavy for Kenyans to bear. Muriel Ladhiambo reports.
The withdrawal of the 2024 finance bill has added a revenue deficit of 364 billion shillings to the country's budget, which President William Ruto says will force Kenya to borrow 1 trillion shillings this financial year. But a report released by Auditor General Nancy Gathungu in June showed that the government could not account for 1.1 trillion shillings borrowed between the year 2010 and 2021. The Law Society of Kenya now wants civil society groups to play a greater role in budget making to enhance accountability.
LSK should have also the ability to formally engage with international financial institutions like IMF and World Bank on legal matters concerning fiscal policies. That's the only way that we can also ask hard questions to these international bodies that continue to raise the curtain or turn a blind eye towards what is happening in the nation.
The Okoa Uchumi campaign held a public assembly in Nairobi today, where the Office of the Controller of Budget flagged the increasing levels of domestic debt, which stand at 5.41 trillion, saying Kenya risks falling into debt distress. The central bank reports that Kenya has so far borrowed 10.27 trillion shillings, which is equivalent to 70% of the country's GDP. In July, global rating agency Moody's downgraded Kenya's credit rating, putting the country in poor standing and indicating a very high credit risk.
If you look at those domestic borrowings, 534.2 is interest which has been paid to service the domestic debt. Why? What is the rate of domestic debt interest rate which are charged in the country? The treasury bills, the treasury bonds are at around 17–18%.
Civil society groups are now calling for an urgent and publicized debt audit and the prosecution of those implicated in poor fiscal management.
In Kenya, what happens whenever there is a deficit? Rarely do we shrink it. Through supplementary budget, the deficit increases.
Because despite the bloodshed that we had seen in the last 2 months, despite the demands that had been made by Kenyans about the need to clean up the public sector, the president unashamedly gave us a person who was being actively investigated for several cases in regard to corruption.
And the prosecution of those implicated in poor management of public funds. Muriel Adhiambo, K24 TV, Nairobi.
Meanwhile, youths are encouraged to channel the bravery they showed during the Gen Z demonstrations into demanding accountability from President Ruto's administration. Martha Karua, leader of the NARC Kenya party, has urged Kenyans to remain vigilant and prevent the reintroduction of contested provisions from the rejected 2024 finance bill. Karua emphasized these points as she positioned herself as the new leader of the opposition against the current government. Mariam Jahid reports.
The leader of the NARC Kenya party, Martha Karua, has expressed concerns over potential violations of rights and freedom under President William Ruto's administration.
You remember his famous statement during his swearing in, "When I put the Bible down." It appears it's not only the Bible he put down, it's also the Constitution that he cast aside.
Karua has urged the youth to persist in holding leaders accountable.
Some aspects of the rejected bill, such as the fuel levy and other issues that this tone-deaf regime is now talking of returning. As Kenyans, we must not accept this and we must continue to question. And this,
while focusing on police brutality against the Gen Z youth, Karua is now calling for accountability and legal action against the officers involved.
We are not seeing any cooperation by the law enforcement agencies, any cooperation from the Ruto regime to establish how many died, to make reparations, to establish the whereabouts of the missing and bring closure to their families. Here today to remind Ruto and his regime that we are waiting for officers who are known, whose faces were widely circulated in the media. Some even their false numbers were circulated. When will they be brought to account?
She plans to present a case to the African Commission on Human and People's Rights and the United Nations.
We will submit this statement and more details as a formal complaint to the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, to the UN Commission on Human Rights, and all other relevant organizations.
Simultaneously, Francis Owino, president of Bunge la Mwananchi, has filed a petition with the East African Court seeking accountability from the Kenya Kwanza administration for the deaths and injuries during the protest.
A petition has been filed accusing the government of Kenya of committing crimes against humanity. And they established that the Republic of Kenya has a case to answer with regards to the heinous crimes perpetrated during two state-sponsored operations.
Following Raila Odinga's announcement of his departure from Kenya politics, Karua has declared her intention to lead the opposition against the current government.
I'm not going to be very active in Kenyan politics henceforth, as I continue now to focus my attention on the continental campaign.
Our being in the opposition is not predicated on the presence or absence of our brother. It is a duty we take up seriously. We are not a party in government, we are opposition.
Martha Karua's appeal to the youth could signal the start of a new position movement.
The country belongs to us, not to the ruling elite.
Mariam Jahid, K24, Nairobi.
On to other news, 5 out of 6 suppliers implicated in the multi-billion shilling edible oil scandal failed to appear before the Senate Trade Committee on Thursday. New revelations suggest that these suppliers were paid both in dollars and shillings and inflated oil prices by up to $9 per litre, equivalent to 1,200 Kenya shillings. The suppliers are also suspected of operating briefcase companies to embezzle over 30 billion Kenya shillings.
Say the organization.
Today's anticipated Senate session meant to advance the investigation into the multi-billion shilling edible oil scandal fell short of expectations. 5 out of 6 suppliers failed to honor their summons from the Senate Trade Committee. Jama Holdings director denied any involvement in the scandal, which allegedly aim to manipulate cooking oil prices.
Did you get any letter from any government institution or KNTC to refund some money because you've overcharged the cooking oil price? You've added price after the agreement.
I did not get any letter, and our company is not a cartel.
Maybe it's not her, but cartels are still there. That's why the price has been increased to $9, and they were told to refund those amount of money, and some of them refunded.
Senators have uncovered details suggesting the scandal was orchestrated to defraud Kenyans of up to 30 billion Kenya shillings.
First, like to understand why the procurement was in US dollars, while the entity contracting is a Kenyan. What was the reason? What was the reasoning behind?
We sold to them on dollars. Prevailing market was 30 converted to Kenya shillings.
I would really want to know where you sourced and how you delivered, because packaging is all the same for all the companies.
Are you first sharing offices with Farmer Holdings? Maybe we start there.
Yes.
The Kenya National Trading Corporation, KNTC, is on the spot for involving middlemen in importing edible oils, despite having the authority to source directly, a move which could have saved taxpayers billions of shillings.
Chair, there is international market for these goods. I don't know why KNTC should open an LC to a middle person in between, and that middle person adds exorbitant prices and send the same LC back to back to the manufacturer. This is an international price. KNTC can buy straight from the market.
The KNTC, together with the suppliers who are believed to be single-sourced by avoiding a competitive process, will now be forced to appear together before the Senate Trade Committee as the senators seek to come up with an airtight report.
It's not all the companies refunded the money. Some didn't refund. So once we get the original tender documents and then the contract and the increment, the price that was increased, then you will know how much money this country has lost.
Joel Chacha, K24 TV, Nairobi.
The national government is urging parents to register their school-going children under the Social Health Insurance Fund before the start of the third term this year. Education Principal Secretary Bello Kipsang has emphasized that students need to be registered as dependents under their parents in the SHIFT program, as Anthony Kwemoi reports.
Despite facing legal challenges at the High Court of Kenya, Principal Secretary Bello Kipsang on Thursday asked parents to register all school-going children under the SHIFT program. In a letter to the newsrooms, Bello Kipsang reiterated the Social Health Insurance Fund Act No. 16, which was enacted in October 2023 and provides that every Kenyan, including children, shall be registered under the Social Health Fund as members. Elijah Wachira, the CEO of the Social Health Authority, stressed the importance of the ongoing registration for tailoring health services to better meet needs.
Many of them, because we've tried to probe, are asking why do we have to register again, and we're already members of NHIF. We are able to classify them and to cluster them into regions because in health, each region has a different disease profile.
Wachira further noted the social health will provide services currently not covered in the National Insurance Fund, therefore asking Kenyans to register in large numbers.
You go to a primary health care facility, all service will be available and will be free. NHIF, for your information, would pay for up to 2 dialysis sessions per week.
Anthony Kwemoi, K24 TV.
Well, at that juncture, we take a short commercial break. When we come back, we'll be focusing, of course, on the newspaper review with my panelist in studio. Eric Theuri is unwell and will be unable to join us this morning. But Honorable, or rather, Dr. Barak Muluka, Strategic Communication Advisor, is already in studio, and Wanjiru Gikonya, Transformative Governance Expert, will be right here to review how the week has been like. But keep sending in your feedback via social media platforms at K24 TV, at Joel Chacha as well, and SMS and WhatsApp numbers on the bottom of your screens. I'll be sampling them before wrapping up New Dawn this morning. We take a short commercial break. We'll be back. Stay tuned.